I've used a lot of meal services, but Hungry Root truly stands out because it's built around the way real families live and eat. They don't just send meal kits. They personalize your grocery cart and meal plan based on your preferences and dietary goals. All I had to do was take a short quiz, and right away, their smart cart technology started building a cart that fit how we eat. Now, each week feels easier, like someone else is doing the thinking for me. I've been focused on cleaner eating lately, and I love that Hungry Root keeps out over 200 additives, including things like high fructose corn syrup and artificial sweeteners. Their meats are hormone and antibiotic free, and the produce options include organic and non GMO picks. They also stock brands I already trust, like Oatly, Vital Farms, and Harmless Harvest. One of our favorite meals has been the teriyaki salmon with green beans, light, flavorful, and done in 12 minutes flat. Plus, I've noticed we waste less food, spend less time shopping, and even save money by skipping those impulse grocery buys. Take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/Dr. Meg and use code Dr. Meg. That's hungryroot.com/Dr. Meg. Code Dr. Meg to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/Dr. Meg. Code Dr. Meg.
Welcome to Parenting Great Kids. Today, we're going to tackle a really hard topic, but it's crucial. We're going to be talking about divorced dads who are at a very high risk for suicide. Joining me today is a distinguished guest, Dr. Eran Magen. Dr. Eran is an expert in education and psychology with an MA and a PhD from Stanford University. He's a visionary founder of Parenting for Humans, a relationship-first, trauma-informed system for parenting, and his nonprofit, divorcingdads.org, plays a crucial role in addressing the pressing issue of divorced dads who are at high risk for suicide.
A lot of the times what I'm seeing is that as fathers access to their kids becomes more and more restricted, they want to spend more and more time with their kids, sometimes even more than before. And there's a silver lining there, right? They really become very oriented toward their kids and the relationship with the kids. But very often the relationship in the father's eyes becomes weaker. And that's one of the really sad things that you see. The fathers feel like, oh, I'm spending less time with my kids. I have less access to them. I don't talk to them as often. We must be drawing apart.
Welcome to Parenting Great Kids. Here's your host, Dr. Meg Meeker.
Dr. Eran, before we dive into the challenges that divorced dads face, I would like to commend you for the impactful work that you're doing in a space that really doesn't get much attention. Can you share insights into the unique challenges that divorced dads confront? First, into their relationships with their kids, and then second, as they contribute to a heightened risk of suicide.
Yes. And hello. And thanks for having me here. And thank you for the work that you're doing too. I think it's incredible to have such comfortable but still very informative and practical conversations about kids and about parenting. I think it's amazing because for most of us, parenting kind of happens as we go. We sort of improvise our way through, and just the opportunity to take time and hear people think about this slowly and think ourselves slowly about parenting and how it's working. I think it's great. So thank you for the work you're doing too. In terms of the risks, the specific risks that divorced dads are facing, I think there are really two big categories from which all of the risks begin. One is the maybe most importantly is the lack of protective factors, right? So divorced dads, let me start over. In the US, men often don't have strong relationships outside of their families, strong, intimate, emotional connections where they can draw support. And so once they become disconnected from their family and from their spouse, they're often left kind of in a vacuum, just looking, not knowing where to go to for support. And they end up being alone and alone is a bad place to be when you're processing significant hardship, and they don't have this benefit that you get from having close people who care about you and want to support you, that you're willing to be open with and vulnerable with. So a lot of men are missing this protective factor on the one side. And then the other hand, you have the risk factor that comes with divorce, the drastic reduction in self-esteem. The message really changes to parents. The message really changes to fathers who are divorcing. They used to think of themselves as the provider, the supporter, the protector, the helper, and often the message becomes reversed in the process, right? You're a difficult person to be with at best. You're a scary person to be with at worst. You shouldn't be around your kids as much as you would like. It's not a good idea, or you don't deserve it, or however you want to think about it. Financial pressures can really mount once all the financial, what's it? Yeah, financial pressures can really mount once all the financial legal matters get taken into account. You split property, and then maybe there's alimony to pay or child support and so on. So a lot of really difficult messaging and stressors are coming toward the fathers, and they have very little skill with getting support, essentially, from existing relationships or developing new relationships to get this support.
Dr. Eran, what puts divorcing dads at such a higher risk of feeling suicidal?
At the bottom line, it's the fact that many men in the US don't have strong relationships outside of their family. And so once that falls apart, they really don't have anyone that they're turning to, talking to, and getting support from. And they're just stuck with their own thoughts in their own heads and become increasingly more isolated and despairing. So that's the most important thing, that they're not talking to anyone. And the most important thing for divorcing dads to do is to talk to someone, right? So opening up to a friend, to a family member, to a therapist. There's lots of people that want to help, and reaching out to those people makes all the difference.
So, if you are a good friend, perhaps a coworker, a sibling of a man going through a divorce, hear that, reach out, and assume, as Dr. Iran said, that he is having trouble right from the get-go, and many depend on you. So intervene, be present with him, and stick with him. That's a critical factor in healing, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, and just be explicit. It doesn't have to be a lot of big words, right? Just saying, "Hey, John, this must be super tough. I'm here for you. I want to make sure that you're okay. Anything you need, let me know. Okay, I really care about you. I don't want anything bad to happen to you, right? And I want your kids to have you in their lives for a long, long time. Okay, so I'm here for you." That's it. And this message bears repeating on a weekly basis. It's okay to say it, but just simple, explicit statements about you caring and you wanting to help.
Talk about a father's relationship before divorce and after. Because if after divorce his self esteem plummets, he's alone, he has no support through friendships, how does his relationship with his kids change, either because of those factors or just because it accentuates the problems he had perhaps before the divorce with his kids?
I think it depends a lot on the kind of relationship that the father had with the kids before the separation or the divorce, and the age of the kids is really crucial here as well. A lot of the times, what I'm seeing is that as fathers' access to their kids becomes more and more restricted, they want to spend more and more time with their kids, sometimes even more than before. And there's a silver lining there, right? They really become very oriented toward their kids and the relationship with the kids. But very often, at least in the short term, the first few months as the dust settles, the relationship in the father's eyes becomes weaker. And that's one of the really sad things that you see. The fathers feel like, oh, I'm spending less time with my kids. I have less access to them. I don't talk to them as often. We must be drawing apart. From the kid side, that's often not the case. Kids, especially young kids, have a very different perception of time anyway. They don't see the gaps so much. But the fathers are really frightened that the relationship is starting to unravel. And then over time, as things stabilize, that becomes really dependent on the kind of agreement that the parents reach or that the court orders, if that's the case in terms of the access to the kids, whether the fathers will have more time with the kids or less. I think that the biggest risk to the kids, really, and to the relationship is when fathers essentially tap out. They just give up. They say, this is too hard. I can't make this work. There are too many barriers to the connection. Maybe I'm actually bad for my kids. I keep getting the message, that I'm not a good person. Maybe it's better for them if I'm not in their life. And that's where the real tragedy happens, in my opinion, when they back out of a sense of defeat and give up on the relationship.
And it really doesn't matter. I've seen, because you're making sense of what I've seen, but I couldn't articulate. It doesn't really matter what socioeconomic area that fathers are that come from, because in my experience, a father's a father's a father. They want close connection with their kids, even if they have no idea how to get there. So let's back up for a minute. Talk about the emotional deposits that you talk about putting into your kids, specifically fathers, and how you can put those into what you call a bank account. It would seem to me that when you're talking about being fully present with your kids, those are times that you would deposit into your child's account in a positive way. So, how can a father, when they're fully present with their child, put emotional chips, I guess, into that account? Because I think sometimes fathers will know, well, I want to be fully present, and mothers, but they really don't know how. And then when they are one on one with their kids, kind of don't know what to do and how to connect. So, can you walk us through that very specific situation where a father says, I want to do something one on one with my child? Then they get there and they don't know what to do.
I think about the strength of relationship like a bank account. And the currency that's in the bank account is goodwill, really. And the question is, how much goodwill do you have toward me? And how much goodwill do I have toward you? And I want to make deposits into that relational bank accounts or relational deposits to increase the amount of goodwill. And I want to minimize the amount of withdrawals that I make. Because when there's very little goodwill, then everything I ask for will be denied or rejected. And when there's a lot of goodwill, everything becomes easy. And so my general approach to parenting is focus on the relationship constantly and always. Don't worry so much about the tactical small things. Build a strong relationship. And if it's there, collaboration is there, vulnerability is there, forgiveness is there, everything becomes easy. And the main ways to make relational deposits is to show your kid that you care about your kid and to show your kid that you respect your kid. These are the two things, care and respect. And you have to show it in a way that makes sense to the kid because of course we love our kids and we want to do everything good for them, but they may not always see it in what we do. And so to be able to verbalize it, to make it explicit is super helpful, super important. So there are lots and lots of ways to show people we care about them, right? We arrange for activities that they like, or we bring them things that they like, or we tell them how much we care about them, or we check in with them to see how they're doing, and we listen to them and we care and so on. And there are lots of ways to show people that we respect them, like speaking to them politely, right? As opposed to relying on the power differential and just slamming down instructions or directions. Taking their opinion into consideration and consulting with them about things. That's a great way of showing respect. Respecting their boundaries when they say not now, saying, okay, let's do this later. Things like that. So that's kind of a general primer to relational bank accounting. In terms of dads and things to do when you're with your kid, I think the easiest thing to do and the best thing to do, so that's like a nice twofer, is to follow the child, right? You check what is the child interested in, what does the child want to do, and then you do exactly that. And if you had any kind of preconceived notions, just let go of them. And if the child changes his opinion or her opinion in the middle, then you follow the child. So a lot will depend on the age of the child, right? If you're with a 3-year-old and you have a good half-hour chunk with your kid, and you just kind of plop down on the carpet in front of your kid and you say, "Hey, what's going on?" And your kid says whatever your kid says, and you say, "Want to play something?" And the kid will go, "Yeah, let's play with the Lego Star Wars." And you're like, fine. Like, you don't really have to come up with ideas. Or the kid will say, yeah, let's pretend to be grasshoppers. And you say, okay. And you do that. So it's about being willing to just follow the child and be silly. Older kids will have more specific things that they want to do that might require more prep. And so maybe part of what could be nice to do is to make plans with them and say, hey, Thursday, we're going to have a bunch of time. What do you want to do? Right. And have a plan. And that's a nice way of showing respect and consulting with the child as well about the things that we're going to do. So I guess I would the very short answer is you follow the child and you ask the child what they want to do. If they have no ideas, maybe you throw out some things until something sticks, right? But you want to inspire them to lead basically. And as soon as they do, you start following them.
I love it. Is this process harder for divorced dads than non divorced dads. This idea of being fully present with them and looking at them as putting goodwill into their bank account. It would seem to me, but I'm a married woman, so I don't know. It would seem to me that the process might be easier if you have a stable home, fairly stable relationship with your spouse than if everything is broken in your life. Talk about how a divorced dad navigates this. Is it harder? And is there something else he should do?
So one thing I want to say right off the bat that's really important is I think it's important to avoid thinking about broken dads as people for whom everything is broken in their life. It's also an easy way for divorced dads or divorcing dads, especially in the process of divorce, to think about their lives, and it's very important to be able to pull out of that frame. Say, actually, a lot of things are wonderful, right? I have a lot going for me here. Uh, this particular issue is very bad. It's very important. It's very difficult. It will get better. People have figured it out. I'll figure it out too. I have people who want to support me. I have a good relationship with my kids, or will have a great relationship with my kids, right? But it's just so dangerous to equate divorce with everything broken. With respect to your question about is it harder for divorced or divorcing dads to have this quality time with their kids? I think there's kind of a paradoxical effect where for dads who are divorcing and are starting to feel how their access to their kids is slipping away, the focus becomes so intense on wanting time with their kids that actually they're probably more present with their kids during the times they have together than dads who are not divorced or divorcing, right? Dads who have kind of access at will to their kids. And you can see it's a real kind of happy irony, I think, that sometimes parents who have their kids all the time and just live with them and are together and there's no issue may have very little focused quality time with their kids. Parenting kind of happens along the way. Whereas with parents that have more restricted access to their kids are super focused and plan ahead for the times that they will have the kids and silence their phone and put it away when they're with their kids, which is unimaginable to parents who have access to their kids all the time. Like, why would I do this? I need my phone. We'll die without our phone. But with parents who have only occasional access to their kids, right, it becomes super focused time and it can actually be very high quality time. And the nice silver lining there is that this happens and that parent still has time for his or her own life, right? A divorced parent is super focused on the child when with the child, but then also has time without the child and can actually have child free time to do grown up stuff. So there is a benefit there in a sense, although it's a circumstance I don't wish on anyone. But I would say that if anything, that the divorced parents have more focus typically when they're with their kids. The challenge is in terms of planning activities. Again, there's just more restricted schedules. Sometimes the schedule is unclear, so it's harder to plan ahead. Sometimes, but sometimes it's very possible. And again, people put a lot of focus and attention into it, which is really nice.
Often, what I see is that the animosity between the ex spouse, that spouse can try to sabotage a father's relationship with his child. And it's a very, very hard situation. So speak to the dad out there whose ex is bad mouthing him, telling the kids that they should not be with their dad, that he's not trustworthy, and even telling the kids things that aren't necessarily true about the dad. And those all impact a child's perception of the father, particularly if they're younger. How does a father navigate that and what do they do?
First off, I'll say obviously this is a problem that can come from either direction, right? Some dads do this, some moms do this. I don't want to, come off saying that moms are evil and dads are angels. Um, but when an ex does this, it's hugely challenging, right? It's so upsetting for a father to hear a kid say, "Oh, mom said that you this and that," or "Mom said that I should be very careful when I blah blah with you," and it's heartbreaking and it's terrifying because the fear is that the relationship will unravel, right? Or that two will even fail to bond if the child is young enough. It's super scary for the fathers in this case. So there are a few things to do. First, most importantly, it's very important for fathers to remember, and if you're a person supporting a father, to remind the father that it's very hard to break the bond between a child and a parent. Very, very hard. There are parents who have done awful things to their kids, and their kids are still feeling uh, uh, this pull to connect with the parent, to somehow find a way to have a strong relationship. It's very hard to do that, and fathers who are worried about these things are probably not the fathers who are doing horrible things to their kids. It's scary. It's super scary, but it's likely not going to actually break the bond. So that's the most important thing to remember, just like to be able to calm down about it. Secondly, um, it's illegal to badmouth the other parent. So with any kind of court involvement, including any kind of parenting plan that happens in court, one of the requirements, essentially always, one of the requirements in any parenting plan is to never speak ill of the other parent within earshot of the child, and to not allow family members and visitors to do the same. It's a big, big deal in the legal system to be bad mouthing and to try to alienate the child from the other parent. It's a huge no no. And so, even pointing that out to the other parent, and I'm a big fan of polite communication, kind of like when you have nothing polite to say, better to say nothing. But to point this out politely, clearly, to say, here's what I've heard from our child. Uh, I'm not sure if this is something you actually told the child or not, because I don't know if the child is saying accurate things. I just want to point out that this is super damaging to the relationship and also super illegal. So please make sure not to make the child think that I'm somehow a bad person and so on. So I think you can point this out to the other parent. Most importantly, though, and maybe counterintuitively, and there's a whole I did a video on this on the website on divorcingdads.org, and people are welcome to go see it there. But the bottom line is just don't worry about it. The kid learns about you from being with you. And if you are an awesome person and then the kid goes home and the ex says, oh, your dad's a horrible person, your kid's going to be confused maybe, but will not just take somebody else's word over their own direct experience with you. So you just be awesome. Definitely don't counter badmouth the other parent. Um, Definitely don't bring the conflict into the relationship with the child. If the child says, "Oh, mommy said that you kick puppies before dinner every day," you could say, "Huh, that's very strange. I definitely don't kick puppies. I love puppies. I think you know this. Um, that's very strange." And then you move on, right? So that at that point already in the kid's head is, oh, that's very strange, but it's not a fight, a war between people. Because the main thing that really hurts kids in separations and divorces is the conflict between the parents, exposure to conflict, right? Take away the exposure to the conflict. There are many kids growing up quite happy to divorced parents. And so to recap, I would say one, remember the relationship will not crumble as a result of you getting badmouthed. Two, put your ex on notice. Just say, like, I'm hearing these things very concerning to me. Do it in writing. Right? I'm hearing these things very concerning to me. If it keeps happening, seek counsel. It's a very, very big no no in the legal system to badmouth the other parent. And just be great with your kid. Like, don't worry about it too much. Express confusion if you need to about this. Express puzzlement, but don't get into it. Don't turn it into a big battle. You don't need to convince your kid that you're awesome. You just need to be awesome with your kid.
Well, thank you for saying that because I have found that, particularly with fathers who find themselves drifting away from their kids because their kids are acting out, they're angry with their father, they go to their father's home, they don't want to talk to them, they're having temper tantrums because they feel this huge tension between mom and dad. And a lot of fathers, in my experience, become despondent after 2, 3, 4 years of feeling bad mouth and that their relationship is being twisted by their ex, just give up. And they feel my child will never love me, doesn't want me. And correct me if I'm wrong here, because this is what I say, but I'm not a psychologist. I say, hang on, just take the high road and stick with your child, because often what they say and how they feel when they're 12 or 15 is not how they feel when they're 22 or 25. And that kids recognize what's good and true and right in a parent. Is that true?
I love how you put it. Take the high road is exactly the takeaway. I'll probably just use that phrase from now on. Yeah, thank you for that. So, yeah, take the high road and focus on your kid, not on your ex.
And don't try to feel like you're the kid's counselor in helping their relationship with your mother, because you're not a counselor, you're dad. And if you're worried about that, to take them to a counselor.
I would say also, and don't put your child in the position of being somehow a judge of the relationship that you have or had with the mother before. It's not on the kid, it's not for the kid. It's tremendously damaging for the kid to try to figure out who's right and who's wrong. Totally sidestep it. Up to and including tell the kid, I don't want to talk about this with you. I don't think it's something we need to discuss. And if it gets to a point of like what happened and oh, she says this and you say that, to say, look, clearly we don't see eye to eye. We both love you very much. You're the most important thing in our lives. I'm so glad we have all this time together, or that we have whatever time we have together. I love being with you. You are my priority. And things did not work out with your mom, or if the kid is much younger, like, your mom and I decided that we don't want to live together anymore, but that has nothing to do with you, right? And I'm here with you to be with you, and to constantly bring it back to the relationship with the kid, rather than think that the kid is somehow keeping score of like who's more right and who's just, again, sidestep it. The kid, as you said, will recognize the parent who's just being a parent and not trying to recruit the kid as an agent.
I have to take a quick break, but before I go, I want to invite you to visit drmegmeeker.com, where you can find a plethora of resources for your parenting journey. Explore our courses, join our free coaching webinar, and take our parent personality quiz. We'll be right back. Some days, parenting feels like chasing moments that never quite land. You ask a question, they shrug. You try again, they look at their screen. And you wonder, why is this so hard? That's why I love FamGabs. It's a 70-card deck created by a child therapist who spent 16 years working directly with families, helping parents and kids break through the awkward one-word answers and really connect. The questions are open-ended, thoughtfully chosen, and designed to get your child talking and keep the conversation going. There are even bonus cards just for parents to help you build your confidence in your connection toolbox. If you've ever wished for a better way to understand your child, or just to have more meaningful conversations as a family, FamGabs is such a gift. Search FamGabs on Amazon and use promo code DrMegPod during checkout to get 10% off your order. That's FamGabs on Amazon. Use promo code DrMegPod and get 10% off your order. You know that moment when your child lights up because something finally clicks? That's what every parent wants, to see their child thrive. But when school just isn't the right fit, that joy can fade. That's why I want to tell you about K-12 Powered Schools. These are tuition-free, accredited online public schools for kindergarten through 12th grade. They're designed to meet your child where they are, so they can learn at their own pace, in their own space, and a curriculum that fits their unique learning style. And here's what sets it apart. This isn't homeschooling. You're not the teacher. K-12's state-certified online educators are trained to make lessons interactive and engaging using innovative technology. And your child still gets social experiences, clubs, extracurriculars, even in-person events. K-12 has helped over 3 million families give their kids the tools to thrive, and they've been doing it for more than 25 years. It could be exactly what your child needs. Visit K12.com/Dr. Meg to find a tuition-free K-12 powered school near you and enroll today. That's K12./DRMEG, all caps.
Divorcing dads are at higher risk for suicide. So, what can a loving family member outside of the ex spouse look for in a divorcing dad who may be a friend, a sibling? What are the signs they should look for? And how should they intervene if they see those signs of depression that could lead to suicide developing?
Divorcing dads, out of all men's demographics, are the highest risk for suicide. So all other marital statuses, I should say, right? Higher than single, widowed, married, any. So just becoming a divorced dad increases your risk for suicide by a lot instantly. And if you are somebody who's close to a divorcing dad, I would not be looking for signs. They're already at risk, right? And so I would start checking in frequently, right? At least once a week, ideally a couple of times a week, maybe more than that, up to and including daily or multiple times. All of this is on the table. They are at high risk as soon as they're starting a divorce process that involves kids. And so start checking in frequently, ask them how they're doing, ask them how they're feeling. If they seem despondent, like you said before, or if they're super upset, check if they see improvement down the line. Like, do you think it's always going to be bad like this? Likely they'll say yes. Like, I don't see any hope. Ask them explicitly, are you thinking about hurting yourself or killing yourself? Many people are worried that by asking this, you could put the idea into people's head. You cannot. People don't hear somebody ask them, are you thinking about killing yourself? And go, oh, that's a good idea. It doesn't occur to me. It doesn't happen. So ask them about this, and don't be afraid, because if they do say yes, there are things you can do. I'll talk about this in a second, but don't be afraid of the answer. Think about this as asking people, do you have like a big bleed somewhere right now, right? Like, it's important to know to be able to help. So start checking in immediately, check in frequently, multiple times a week, ask them how they're doing, ask them about suicidality, um, every couple of weeks basically, and offer um, and be available to them as much as possible, right? So tell them, call me anytime you need. I'm here for you. I want to be helpful. Let's think through this, and so on. I mean, I have a lot more to say about how to support divorcing dads, but these are the basics. In terms of what I mentioned before about asking about suicidality. So the question is, have you been thinking about hurting yourself or killing yourself? And if they say yes, to say, we should make sure that you talk to somebody right away because your kids need you now and in the future. The hook into the hearts of dads and any parent is their kid. This will never fail, and it has the, as a friend of mine likes to say, the added advantage of being true. Their kids do need them. Their kids would be much worse off if their father died by suicide or for any other reason. The kids need the parents. They do both with the parents. And so to say this to a parent will stop the parent in their tracks if they're thinking about hurting themselves, right? And might even get them to say, okay, yes, come see me. Let's go to the emergency room if that's where it is. And you can literally just go with somebody to the emergency room. If they say, I'm having a lot of thoughts about killing myself, it's hard for me to not think about, I think I might do it. I'm really worried about it. You just go to the ER. If it's not there, but you feel that things are escalating, the parent is like, yeah, I'm thinking about it. I don't want to do it, but I keep thinking about it. And I just don't know if there's a point to being alive like this when, I don't even know if I'm any good to my kids. You reaffirm strongly you are very important to your kids, even if you don't see it right now, even if they're not talking to you right now and you haven't spoken in a year, you're super important in their lives. And when 20 and 30, their story should be, and then my dad came back. It should not be, and then my dad died or suicide. And then help your friend, family member, whoever that father is, connect with support. Therapy hotline like 988, right? Available 24/7. You just dial 988 from your phone. They're available 24/7. It's a free, confidential, national level suicide prevention service and crisis lines. You can just talk to somebody there if you're really upset. You don't have to be suicidal. Tell them about the resources, help them connect to the resources up to and including setting up an initial appointment with them, bringing them to that initial appointment if it's a therapist, or going with them to the ER. It's rare, but it really can happen. You don't want to be the person saying, "Oh, I guess I just missed it." Right? They're at risk as soon as they're starting the divorce process, and the risk is highest soon after. Right? That's the acute period. But then there will be bumps afterwards when again the risk will rise depending on kind of the vicissitudes of how the unraveling of the spousal relationship goes.
You've done a lot of work with suicide prevention, and I just want our audience to know that your commitment to suicide prevention extends beyond divorcingdads.org. And I would encourage people who are getting a divorce, who are supporting a man getting a divorce, if you're in the middle of it, you're 2 or 3 years out, go to divorcingdads.org. But you also founded Early Alert to help reduce suicide among veterans or service members, students, clinicians, and employees everywhere. Do you have counselors available who can talk to people, or do you give them recommendations as to where to go? What does Early Alert do, and how does it help people who are struggling?
The philosophy of early alert is to check in with people proactively in order to catch times when people are starting to decline rather than only find them in crisis or wait until they reach out to us when they're in crisis. And so we check in with people once a week to see how they're doing. So if you're a university student and your university works with early alert, then students on campus get a text message once a week saying, "How are you?" in various ways, right? How has your sleep been this past week? Do you have enough money for your basic needs? How are friendships going? How's your mood been? And so on. One question per week. And based on the responses, we see if people's wellness is declining or improving, or if they're really distressed right now. And if they're writing something that seems like there's a problem but is handleable, then we'll suggest resources on campus, around campus, local resources that they can reach out to and get support. If we see an elevated need, we have counselors that will call out to the person in real time, right? You're texting us at 2 a.m. saying, I can't fall asleep. I'm so nervous. I don't know how I'm going to pay rent. And I'm worried about me and my family getting kicked out of my apartment next month. Like, you're going to get a call from a counselor within a couple of minutes if this happens. So it's not meant to be an ongoing counseling service, but it's crisis response or urgent counseling response based on these responses to the check-ins that we're getting. And so far, we've been working with institutions. So like we'll work with a university, with a med school, with a VA facility, and so on. We're starting to do this now with individuals, right? So parents, this is where different areas of my life are starting to intersect. If parents want to have early alert, do these check-ins with their kids, because the check-ins are confidential. So it's nice for the kids to know it's not going right to the parents, right? So if there's a kid in middle school, high school, going off to college, and parents want to have a system checking in with them once a week and connecting them to resources and offering counseling as needed and so on. So that's a way to do it as well. We're at earlyalert.me. I was told I need to provide the URL. But the most of the work right now is institutional, like I was saying. But yeah, I have a strong vested interest in suicide prevention, suicide awareness, and I believe very strongly in proactive work, checking in early, not waiting for crisis, but as soon as there's signs of decline, starting to bring resources on board, because it's so much harder to deal with an ongoing crisis than to deal with the start of distress, or even pretty high distress that's not yet at crisis levels. It's just so much easier to change course, to change the trajectory of that.
I want to, as we finish, I want to let our audience know that depression and suicidality is treatable, that there is hope for people, even if they're pondering suicide and they have a severe depression. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, on multiple levels. I mean, first of all, a lot of people who die by suicide have had no mental health diagnosis, about half, right? It's not even necessarily a mental health thing.
Why is that?
So suicide is usually impulsive. And this is part of why suicide prevention methods that seem kind of silly at first glance, this is why they work. This is why, people used to jump a lot off of Golden Gate Bridge, and then they started installing some fences that make it harder to climb over the bridge and some nets to catch people too. And the number of deaths by suicide dropped because people in a moment of despair decide to end their lives. It's not usually something that's planned out far in advance and people are super determined to do it, because it's true, when people are determined to die, they will die. You can't really stop someone from killing themselves. But most of the time, it's people who are having a very hard time and they're kind of on the edge of feeling this extreme despair all the time. People may be feeling bad for a long time. People may even be thinking about killing themselves and how they might do it and so on. But eventually something sets this plan in motion, and that's usually a moment of despair. And if you can get people, ideally before this moment of despair, realizing that they're even thinking about this and going into treatment, great. But even if you can get them at the moment of despair and just hold them for a few minutes, it passes. And so suicide prevention works at the acute level, and suicide prevention works at the kind of upstream level as well. When, as you said, when you identify people who are walking around feeling very bad, maybe severely depressed, maybe severely despaired, and connect them with supports and help them see hope, suicidality subsides almost always, not always, but almost always subsides. And the biggest protective factor against making a suicide attempt is a sense of connection, right? Being connected to people who care about us, or being connected to a mission that's important to us, even that. Um, it's a huge protective factor. And this is why just being present in the life of somebody who you know is going through a hard time, being consistently present and available, telling them they're important to you, telling them you're happy to be there, because they often think of themselves as a burden to other people, right? They're the Eeyore and they don't want to be the Eeyore. But letting them know that you're really happy, that they're in your life and that you like talking with them, and that even when they're going through a hard time, it's a very meaningful connection, and that you're grateful for their presence in your life. It makes a huge difference. It's the biggest protective factor against suicide attempts.
And it sounds so simple, and it really is simple, because you're back again to strong relationships between fathers and kids, fathers and a good friend. My guest has been Dr. Eran Magen. Well, that wraps up today's episode of Parenting Great Kids. A huge thank you to Dr. Eran Magen for joining us today. Over the years, we've talked a lot about depression and suicide, but it never feels like it's enough. Learning that 79% of all people who die by suicide in the United States are male, and how much the risk increases for divorced men is truly shocking. And the truth is, the topic doesn't get the attention it deserves. As we continue this month-long focus on men's wellness in honor of Father's Day, let's close with this. Make it a point to check in on those who might need support, even if they seem to be okay. Reach out and lend a listening ear without judgment, especially to the men in our lives. Remember, sometimes just knowing someone cares can make all the difference. If you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of suicide, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 988 or 1-800-273-TALK, 1-800-273-8255 for free confidential support 24/7. If you need additional support, Dr. Magen's resources at parentingforhumans and divorcingdads.org can be incredibly helpful. And if you ever need one-on-one coaching, visit me at meekerparenting.com/coaching. Until next time, friends, always remember that great kids are raised, not born.